Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our panel event today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Zoe, the Managing Director at Bright, and we're a marketing consultancy that focuses on driving business value for our clients by giving marketers the power to do great work. Today, we're going to focus our panel session on artificial intelligence, or AI, an area we're certainly hearing a lot about, both from our clients, but also across the marketing landscape and in the media. So as marketers, we're living in an exciting time. In the here and now, we're starting to see AI already giving our marketing teams a nifty boost in many areas, including content generation, market research, and data analysis to help us work more effectively and efficiently. But looking further down the road, that's where things start to get really interesting. The opportunity to generate better quality leads, improve personalisation, and obviously focus on creating more and more tailored and personalised content. So today, to help us explore this topic, we've got some brilliant panel guests lined up. I'm going to let them introduce themselves now and share a bit about their background. Let's start with Kate.
Hi, I don't think you can see me, so I'm off camera. So I'm Kate. I'm CMO of a company called Brightbeard. We're an AI engine for paid search. So we help, it's sort of democratized AI to help performance marketers get more value out of Google and Bing paid search by automating A/B tests, automating ad copy generation, bid adjustments, that kind of thing. But I'm also running a marketing team across 4 markets with 3 people. And if I didn't use AI tools, I wouldn't manage the workload. So I'm focused in the day-to-day nitty-gritty of using all these tools that are now available to make my team more productive and the quality of our output higher.
Thanks, Kate. And over to you, Mark. Oh, Mark, you're on mute.
Thank you for inviting me. Delighted to be here. So my name is Mark Bresnan, the Chief Product and Technology Officer for Informatech, which is a division of Informa, a FTSE 100 business. Informatech are a leading provider of market insight and market access to the global business technology community. I've been a senior technologist for years and a product guy, and I'm deeply embedded in a lot of the AI initiatives happening across Informa. It's a super exciting space. There's lots kind of happening in the organization, and I get to have a good look outside the organization as well. So yes, I'm delighted to be here to talk about it today.
Great. And thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. So this is going to be a panel debate, and we've got some questions we're going to walk through, but we'd love to hear from you. So please do drop your thoughts and questions on the chat. We'll also be sharing some useful information, either as links on the chat throughout this session, and I'll also be sharing a reading list after this event, which is going to bring together all of the great content and assets that will hopefully help you on your AI adoption journey. So let's get started. So first question, where do you think AI can add value in marketing? Let's start with Kate.
So there was a really interesting study that Boston Consulting Group released last week in conjunction with, I think, Wharton Business School and MIT, so proper experimentation. And they were trying to figure out how strategy consultancies can use AI. And they found that the consultants who used AI were 25% more productive and had a 5% higher quality of output. So a lot of the learning was it brought the sort of lower performer consultants up to the higher performance. There was a boost for the higher performance. But that got me thinking that if Boston Consulting Group, like the strategy consultancy, can use this technology to improve their output, then it's, you know, it's so easy to make the case for marketing, how we can use it. So we use it just on jobs to be done, really. So we've got a blog post, we don't know where to start, use some of the copywriting tools, you've got a web page. start it, test the headlines. You'll probably never find the final answer, you'll probably tweak it, but it's a really good starting place for a lot of marketing tasks, especially in B2B. Email marketing, I think, is the biggest use case for AI. So there's lots of people using the auto-generated email marketing, and let's have a discussion about what people think about that, because I know it's a controversial topic.
Yes, I think that's right. And authenticity being questionable in some cases. Mark, what's your point of view on the, kind of where you think AI can add value in marketing?
But I mean, I think marketing is the perfect place for generative AI to really make a dramatic impact at every single level of the flywheel. And I think really in the last 8 months, we've seen just an explosion of new capabilities, and that that will accelerate and continue. And I think lots of marketing automation engines are going to have a lot of AI tools built into them probably by the end of the year. And this is like a really exciting wave, and it is a wave. There'll be a lot more kind of innovation iterations that will kind of change as things kind of grow on. But to my mind, I think from a practical standpoint, a lot of companies that I see and I talk to, including ourselves, there's an awful lot of experimentation going about, as I say, different parts of the kind of the marketing flywheel about how you use it, how you try things out, experimentation against success criteria. Some things work, some things aren't great. But there's a lot of excitement because it can really, I kind of look at it essentially a little bit like having Microsoft use the term co-pilot for their tooling. And it is really apt. It really does allow you to have somebody beside you helping basically to be more productive as a marketer.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think that both of you kind of alluded to that, the need for still the marketer to be involved in that process and to play their part to make sure that the outcomes and outputs are what we're looking for as marketers to deliver.
Certainly, and we'll definitely talk about more about that, human in the loop, the importance of authenticity, quality control and stuff like that. But I think a lot of it, to my mind, is that, as I say, there's a lot of experimentation going on, but I think quite soon companies will be moving into it. It becomes a part of the standardized workflow as companies kind of figure out what works well, etc.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess kind of moving beyond the kind of question of whether we think it's applicable, because obviously clearly there's a lot of use cases. I think it'd be great if we could maybe think about some examples of generative AI in particular and how it's being used successfully within your business. I think, Kate, it would be really great to get your point of view on this, how, as you've already alluded to, you're using it, but also the product that you might go to market with is supporting marketers.
Cool. So yeah, talking about the product first. So we have an AI engine for Google paid search and Google Shopping. And that uses all of Google's tech. So we're taking all the data feeds from Google, but we're sort of unboxing their black box a bit. And we have an unsupervised machine learning model that manages bid adjustments. It works particularly well for underserved Google customers, the ones who can't make Google work immediately, easily. So long sales cycles, low web traffic, low budgets, international, no localization on the ground. So the units do things like they'll scan your website and your competitors in each market and build out a list of keywords so you can save time on keyword list generation. It'll test all your ad copy and A/B test which one works and then roll out the best one without you getting involved. You can blacklist and whitelist ad copy if you're in a regulated market. That's important. It translates all of the ad copy into all the different markets. Think about that. It could be 10,000 keywords and 10,000 ads for some big customers. So you can switch on a French search campaign super easily and then test it with a couple of landing pages. So that's what the AI engine does. As a particular strong use case, you can build AI yourself, but we found that the cost of the technology skills are incredibly high. They sort of tend to be in Seattle. London's quite a big hub for AI and data science. So you can build it yourself, but you'll have to have a very large performance marketing budget to make that worthwhile, I think. And then beyond that, use cases, I mean, I found image generation absolutely critical for using some of these tools. So getting websites up and running, translating websites into different markets. We launched in Denmark and we translated it with ChatGPT and then ran it faster, Danish translator. So it just makes those things really quick. You can do them in weeks or a week instead of it being a 2-month long website production process.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kate. And I do think it's very interesting when you think about it in terms of those efficiency gains and the effectiveness that you can drive through using these tools, but also you've got to bring that together with engaging your audience. So I think that kind of helps us move into our next question, which is how should marketers approach testing and adopting Gen AI? I mean, at Bright, obviously, we are very much grounded in agile marketing, which is the perfect foundation in terms of that test and learn approach. As Mark's already alluded to, making sure that you're able to form hypothesis and set experiments and tests that you can then test these tools against real use cases is very powerful, and you can start small so you don't have to go all in. You can quickly learn and then scale if it's going to be successful and beneficial, and those tools that aren't, then obviously you can move beyond those. I mean, Mark, have you got anything else to add around that?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit of color. I agree with everything you said there, but I mean, first of all, I'd say, don't wait. Your competitors aren't waiting. Just get started, but do it with some coherence and some logical thinking to identify relevant use cases for specific audiences and specific colleagues. That'll be kind of specific teams, etc., to help deliver specific outcomes, and then you work out how to achieve it. Essentially, as you said, Zoe, around making sure that there's kind of a clear kind of like set of criteria around the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and then having a framework to like, well, which are the right use cases to pursue, and that could be around strategic alignment, it could be around revenue generation, it could be around leads. Like just being really, really clear about what are you actually trying to do, and then making sure that you're kind of looking outside as well for kind of like inspiration, learnings, attending panels like this, just really absorbing information, educate yourself, learn about the risks. There are many, and we'll talk about that soon. And then making sure it's being really clear about the guardrails for the teams internally about what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, to help kind of start managing some of the risks. But the AOI it's moving very quickly, and the pace is going to accelerate rather than slow down. So yeah, dive in, don't overthink it, but make sure there's guardrails would be how I summarize it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Kate, have you got anything to add?
I'm going to go back to this Ethan Mollick, who is the professor of AI, I think, at Wharton, who talks about the jagged frontier of AI, which is so true. If you dive in, as Mark said, and test it, you will find the jagged frontier so easily. There'll be some tasks that you think an AI will find it incredibly easy to do, and it just can't. Never ask it maths questions. It's actually incredibly bad at maths because it's a large language model. So maths, awful. Don't do sums on it. Really good though for knowledge bases. So I use it to find Salesforce knowledge bases because it's much better than Salesforce's own, or how to do Excel formulas. So you can ask it the exact question you want and it will come back with the right format. So yeah, the jagged frontier is one to keep in mind, and you only find out the jagged frontier when you jump in safely, as Mark said, and test it on what you need help with.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. You need to be really thoughtful about what you're looking to achieve. And as Mark says, you've got to have it aligned to a clear business outcome. Otherwise, you're just going to be tinkering around the edges. And actually, what you want to do is to build that business case, show that value so that you can obviously adopt that tool more widely if appropriate.
Yeah, just to add, I have heard of companies, mostly in the startup scene, who have given ChatGPT, given them £20 license to every single department and told them to come back in a month with their productivity and quality findings. So giving it to customer success, giving it to finance, giving it to the tech team, giving it to marketing. I think it's relatively easy to find marketing use cases, but I thought that was a really interesting way of getting process adoption and getting a real jump in your business-wide efficiency. It also gets a lot of teams on the same page, so you can start aligning on the benefits of it and where you don't want to play and what the guardrails are.
It's similar to that, Kate, in format. And as I said, we're 12,000 people. About 4 or 5 months ago, we did a survey across the whole company to ask everybody, What are you using AI for? How are you using it? How are you finding it? Is it working well for you? Outcomes, etc. And it was kind of a, you know, a really specific survey, because the point was it to help some of the things you talked about there: transparency, visibility, alignment. Teams saying, "Oh wow, I didn't know it could do that." So it just really bubbled up a lot of the things that were going on. There's just so much entrepreneurial spirit across so many individuals and teams. It was really wonderful to see.
That's a great idea, and I think it is really nice to be able to spotlight some of those areas where people are innovating, and also really like demonstrates a growth mindset as well, being open to these, you know, these discussions and thinking about how these tools are going to be used in the business.
Very much so. It's really motivating as well, and inspiration for people around them. So yeah, it builds an energy around it, which is really important. So, because you know, you got to straddle the line about people being worried about implications for what's it mean for me, for my job, and things like that, versus a more optimistic view is like, wow, I could do so much more. I can be really so much more productive today and tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I think that kind of is a good time to move on to the next question, really, which is focused on describing your experiences really with incubating and testing these tools and validating them. Okay, I think it'd be really great to, obviously, you've alluded to some of the tools that you've used. Is there some specifics you can share really of how you got that incubation going?
So I think there are a couple of use cases, aren't there? You have a small marketing team and you want to do more. And then it's a relatively easy step to using them for efficiency. Or you have a large marketing team. And I have found from talking to other marketing people that actually if you have a really large team, you do get some pushback of people who aren't prepared to test it out. So I'll talk from the small use case. I think Mark's probably better to talk from the large use case. But from a small use case, we've got, you know, if we work in agile, we've got a list, a topic list or a sprint list so long that you couldn't possibly manage it without some of these tools. So you know, finding images for new websites, you know, we tested Midjourney to do that. Midjourney's quite an interesting AI tool. It's actually harder to get brilliant output out of it for image generation. But once you get the knack, I actually found giving Midjourney to graphic designers who understood Pantone references and camera angles was the way to get amazing output out. So you do need some expertise to put in the right prompts. I'm a big fan of Synthesia, which is a text to video app. So you can use that for quick videos. You can do a video promoting your company in 10 minutes, and then you can switch the language from English to Swedish. Sometimes the accents are a bit funny on it, but you can pick the correct accent. And then there's a lot of really good new tools that copyright with your brand tone of voice in line. I haven't used those, to be honest, yet. I'm more doing the ChatGPT and then editorializing it. But there's a couple of the ways to sort of start in the marketing use case.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, we're seeing with our clients a real, like, what a diverse range of testing and learning across AI, both with standalone, like, kind of new tools that are coming into the market, and people, you know, like, want to use ChatGPT and understand how they can get value from it. But equally within that existing tool set, there's AI now being built in, and so like thinking about how they can use that to be more efficient in many cases actually within that existing tooling. But I think you made an important point, which goes back to, like, you do need to know your craft in order to get the best from the tool. So I think that as well, like, takes away some of that debate around, like, am I going to lose my job? It's like, no, but you do need to learn how to work within these tools, and then that is an important capability to build within your marketing team as well. So going back to the idea of agility and taking that test and learn approach, if you are not working in an agile way, I think you will find it harder to build out and test these tools.
I totally agree with that. I think it has to be kind of short cycles, short iterations of test to learn and value adding, because no other way is really going to work essentially. Which brings me to around it's really important to my mind around using kind of a standard customer centric product development life cycle, which is based on agile essentially, around how you adopt these tools, and always thinking about what's in it for the customer, like about everything essentially, because that's going to, when you kind of untangle that question and you pull the thread on it, it starts bringing out all sorts of things about trust, level of automation we're comfortable with, data privacy, and perception in the marketplace, brand authority. So it really helps you to think, are we going about this the right way, and are there things we need to adjust?
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable point. And it goes back to the Agile Marketing Manifesto, you know, the customer at the heart of what you're doing. Are we adding value? Is really important. And also just validating what they're comfortable with, as you say. Like, you know, how transparent do you want to be about the fact you're using these types of tools when they're engaging with you? For instance, if they were to engage with a chatbot, you know, there's a question mark as to how transparent you should be about whether that's a virtual or an actual person.
Yeah, I've got really strong opinions on that one. I think you have to be on the chatbots and customer service lines. And it only makes sense if you're giving the customer a better experience and they've got handover points to real people, right? So no, everyone thinks, oh my God, it's going to be like when I call my bank and I'm going to be on the phone for 45 minutes and then I'll have to go through another IVR and then they'll drop my call again. That's not a great customer experience. So you actually can get an amazing customer experience out of AI. You can give the AI the tools to link into your customer delivery. You know, if someone's calling about a delivery, you can give them the right order number and link it all together using the email address as the validation point, and you can get amazing results. And it will be a lot quicker than sitting on a phone call. But I think you need to be really clear that you're using AI, and if it's not working, there's a handover point to a real person and you can escalate it. So it does need some thinking in the customer service and success teams to think how you escalate that in terms of process.
I totally agree with that. Being really transparent upfront about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and then taking steps if it's not a better experience than was there previously. Essentially, it's got to be better rather than kind of going backwards. And around kind of like, to get genuine feedback, to my mind, there has to be a process around continuous validation with customers, and that's going to be the people you're trying to reach essentially, to make sure how they're finding it, and so you're continually getting feedback as your kind of new features and new comms are released, and new kind of content marketing kind of is like, what's the quality like, how are people feeling about it, so that you can adopt and adjust course as needed. And also having internal validation for marketers, if there is big teams there, but how are they feeling about it, what else do they need, how can this be better to help them improve. So kind of two-way validation, internal and external. That's more pertinent to larger teams, and as Kate was talking about, having larger teams can be more challenging in some ways around adoption of tooling like this.
Yeah, agreed. So I suppose that leads us on really to talk about a bit more about those challenges or the risks that marketers face when they're implementing AI strategies, and maybe thinking about a bit more about how they can overcome and mitigate. And I know we've talked briefly about that, but Mark, it would be great to get your point of view, obviously, in an organisation of your scale. I imagine that's something that's really you're thinking about all the time.
It's very much a hot topic in every large company around the world in many sectors. Essentially, there's a lot of risks with them. We just talked specifically around generative AI. There's major issues around intellectual property, data privacy, bias, hallucinations, erosion of trust, and there's because there's like very little regulation at the moment. It's a bit of the Wild West out there. And therefore there's kind of real risks around audiences losing engagement. If people just have a fire hose, if marketers have a fire hose of content going out, great, we can spin up loads of content, this is awesome. You can really damage your trust and brand authority, lose audience engagement, brand perception can get really low. So a lot of it's around, there's no silver bullet to any of this stuff, but taking small considered steps, pilots, being really clear about success criteria, continuous validation we talked about, and then being transparent with colleagues internally about what's being planned and what's been done, and customers, as we talked about, and making sure that there's kind of clear guardrails set up up front within the company. Now they can be kind of like quite short and basic whilst the company figures out a more nuanced position, but being clear about kind of guiding colleagues about what's allowed, what's not allowed, what tools can we use, providing training around that. And then obviously if a company has a data privacy or data governance function, it's making sure that that really at the center of the debate. What I'm expecting to see over the next couple of years is around chief AI ethics officers becoming up to the fore and bubbling up as a critical role to help kind of drive the debate. And then my final point, just around, because there is a lack of regulation across all industries around this, being really transparent about decisions making, about the logic being used, about how things are being done, and having audit trails and making sure that you're able to kind of hold up and say, yeah, we can stand behind that. We didn't quite get it right, but at least we know where we went wrong and we can adjust it. So I guess that's responsible use of AI.
Yeah, I think that's very important to have due consideration around that. And I guess that goes to as well, like, how do we strike the right balance between automation through AI and maintaining the human touch? Especially because, as you say, there could be some, you could really damage your reputation and brand. And I think people are already seeing like quite a lot of inauthentic content coming through on social media, for example. It's just a vast proliferation that is being generated now, and whether it adds value to the customer is really questionable. So yeah, I mean, what's your point of view on that?
Is
Mark,
that
we start with you.
to me? Sure. Well, it's not going to happen by accident in terms of kind of like striking the right balance, and therefore it needs careful consideration. But it shouldn't be kind of like the point of debate for months and months and months. So I think the balance has to be struck about how much consideration you deploy versus just getting on with it, essentially. And that comes back to small pilots, small test cases, etc. And we talked about at the very start, to my mind, keeping a human in the loop, it's really, really important, because it will help to mitigate some of these challenges. So you don't just have a fire hose of content that's going out across all channels that people don't know, is it accurate? Has it been plagiarized? Are the citations correct, etc.? Is the position and the tone suitable? Because the technology maturity, it's nowhere near being good enough to just let it run and send it out. So I think having that kind of like that checkpoint to make sure that there's senior people that can validate and sense check, and also to improve it, because there's a little bit of a flavor when you're reading some of the content that you're referring to there. You just know that that's been spat out by a machine, and therefore it lacks authenticity.
Yeah, thank you. Kate, what about you? What do you think about this?
I mean, I agree with Mark. I think there's a really interesting debate in areas like SEO. So, there's about 50-50 marketing people I speak to. 50% of them, mostly in startups and small teams, are like, yeah, let's switch the fire hose on, because there is a competitive advantage for switching the fire hose of SEO content generation on. Google have said they won't penalize it, whether that's true, but you can just rapidly scale. If you were finding, it hard to get content out, then you can rapidly scale and add volume, versus the other side of the debate where, right for your users, Google will figure it out and, will penalize you if you just sending out derivative content. So I guess that is a judgment about risk, isn't it? About risk and how much you want to push the line in some of these channels. And that is probably about the size of your marketing budget, the rate of growth that you need to achieve, and the risk appetite of the business. I imagine most large corps wouldn't want to go there. Lots of startups have to compete. So that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how that unfolds, and what we can take from that as well. So before we move into kind of asking for questions from our guests, then I thought we'd kind of maybe think about any tips for marketers who are thinking about this in terms of introducing the use of Gen AI specifically into their routines. So, and how really tips for how it could assist them with their business growth. And then we've had a few kind of questions about tools, so let's come back to that. But yeah, what is your kind of, I guess, your top tips for getting started?
Just do it. Just see, right? You've got, there's probably a couple of blog articles on your to-do list that you haven't started yet. I have massive essay crisis on some of my topics, and I put them to one side. Just see what it will come out with, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. The other one, I mean, listen, the other really good one is summarizing video. So webinars like this, if you do them for your B2B company, use a video to text tool and then use summarization tools like ChatGPT to pull together. I've managed to compress like 1 day of work into 3 hours doing those kind of things. It's still not minutes, but yeah, just jump in and test it and put your nasty to-do list into ChatGPT and see what it comes up with.
Mark, your top tips?
I mean, I agree with that. And to add to that as well, outside of the workplace, it's worth just, Mark, just getting comfortable with these tools in their home life, essentially. Want to plan a holiday? Use ChatGPT. Want to organize a whole bunch of data around your bank, things like that? Like, use different tools for that. So experimentation at home is really helpful because you're not kind of playing around with sensitive company information then. And then when you are in the company, it's being really clear about what you're allowed to do. And if you're playing around with something like ChatGPT or ChatGPT-4, making sure they're using the toggle to say, don't put my sensitive information to train the LLM to help with kind of data privacy. So being cognizant of that. I think afterwards we're going to send out a couple of slides which kind of has a number of tools across different kind of productivity areas, which are kind of like, it just gives an area to kind of explore. A lot of them have they've got free trials, so it's worth just kind of trying around different things, see what works for you. There's varying levels of quality, but obviously you have to be really careful because you don't know where the data is going. I think it's a question there about transcription tool. Otter is another good one that will just basically take a video like this and just transcript it on the fly, essentially, so that it summarizes kind of key actions and key insights and things like that. So there are so many things to really make people more productive in the workplace.
Yeah, I agree. And as Mark said, we'll be sending out a roundup of the tools and the different kind of reading list sources, including podcasts, really great articles, and like sources of information, so that everyone can obviously find those. I guess the top tip from my point of view would be, if you're not working in an agile way, you really need to embrace and change your ways of working if you want to get the most value from these tools in your business. I think that there needs to be that clarity of what you're trying to get from this tool before you go with it. Don't, you can play around to a certain extent, but you've really got to demonstrate some value to your audience, to your business. And then I do think starting small and taking that test and learn approach is so important as you get started. I think for me as well, one of the things we're all going to struggle with a little bit, if I'm honest, and as marketers probably already struggle with in our day-to-day, is data quality. And data quality will be increasingly important if you want to get the best from these tools, because they're only going to be able to be as effective as, depending on the quality of your data that you're putting into them. So
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think we've got to think about that.
Can I give one more small tip if you don't mind? Because
sure.
I have kind of like, having talked to the companies, I found that some people, they almost hit a wall, because in the early days they're like, I'm just not really getting anything valuable back. And my response to that is like, learn how to write really good prompts.
Yeah.
It's so important, because
Yes.
you ask basically ChatGPT or Bard to take on the persona of, as a content marketer professional or as an executive or whatever it might be, and you'll get a lot more richness in the reply and the quality. And as you'd expect, it's very meta, but there's AI tools that you can put on top of ChatGPT to write better prompts.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and actually, one area of ChatGPT which is exploding is all the plugins that you can now test. So you have got like this huge ecosystem that's beginning to emerge, and that adds to the complexity for sure, but also the opportunities are even greater.
100%. And it's just really integrated your day-to-day workflow. There's, like you say, there's plugins like into all sorts of different kind of SaaS tools now, with MailChimp, with Outlook, with Gmail, and you can just immediately get value, and it's almost seamlessly a part of your workflow. You don't have to jump into something else. It's just there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where it's going to get really exciting. So we've got a few minutes left, and we'd love to kind of open it up, and if there's any questions people would like to ask. I know we've seen some questions come up about tools. As we said, we're going to share a reading list and also an overview of some of the tools that you can test. But if you've got tools you're using as well that you're finding effective, we'd really love for you to share those too. So If anyone's got anything they would like us to talk about a bit more, please drop your questions in the chat.
While we're waiting for that,
raise your hand. Sorry, Kate.
No, there's a really good AI aggregator tool. So Futurepedia, there's an AI for that, top AI tools. So there's some really good aggregator sites, and you put the use case that you want in, and it gives you 6 tools that you can test. So, you know, there's comparison sites now.
Great.
Something else to be mindful of whilst we're waiting for questions around the cost of deployments. This is kind of, you know, more for mid-sized and larger companies, but the cost can start racking up as all these kind of SaaS companies start kind of bolting in and baking in AI capabilities. Their price tags are going to start going up, and therefore the kind of the cost of your technology stack is going to get much higher. And then when you start thinking about developing, as Kate talked about, the kind of significant cost base around creating your own AI capabilities. So it's kind of, you need to make sure that you're going to get the right kind of ROI for your marketing outcomes if you're going to be deploying lots of different things. So that's always got to be balanced.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to as well, you know, that kind of principles of agile and being cross-functional and really like collaborating with your colleagues in different parts of the business, you know, like IS, and just, you know, making sure that you've got joined up considerations around it. It's not going to be easy to integrate these tools if you're just acting in isolation. So
that's a really good point, so because they shouldn't just be, you know, an AI strategy for marketing. It should be for the whole company, and then marketing is a subset of that. Again, it depends on the size of the company and what the company strategy and goals are.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, well, we haven't had any questions yet, but I mean, aside from tools, I think, you know, it has been such an interesting debate. So I do want to take the time to say thank you to our panel members for taking the time to join us today. I think it's been really great to get an insider view. And also just want to say thank you to everyone for joining. At Bright, we've been developing an AI adoption matrix, so that really helps marketers to navigate AI activation. And if you want to know more about this or how we drive business value through giving marketers the power to do great work, please just drop a note in the chat. As I said, we're going to follow up with the reading list and also roundup of tools, which I think will be super useful for everybody. And we'll make sure that we get that out as soon as possible. And the final thing to ask you all is, if you have any topics that you would like us to cover, or if you would like us to continue our discussions on AI in our next event, then please drop your thoughts in the chat. So I think, unless we've got any final thoughts, Kate, Mark, anything you'd like to kind of share? I think we'll give people 5 minutes to get their cup of tea.
I'll give one brief little kind of anecdote from somebody in my team, which might be kind of relevant and pertinent regardless of kind of business size, essentially. That I recently had an optimization person start on my organization. It was the first one on my team around basically improving customer journeys on websites, registration journeys, etc., etc. And when he started, I was talking about, do you want me to kind of find some developers around the organization? No, I was like, well, why not? You don't know how to code. He's like, I'll use ChatGPT. And he's only started a few months ago, but he made an immediate impact because he was just being really entrepreneurial, and he ends up kind of like having ChatGPT fill in his capability gaps himself because it will be faster than any other way, and he's in control, and then he can make sure that it's done properly. And it meant that it just allowed him to deliver a lot more impact as a single person rather than 2 years ago when you couldn't really do that.
No, I think that's a great story. I love that. And it goes back to that kind of growth mindset and that idea that people really need to think about their own capabilities and how they'll need to change how they work to get the most from these tools, to be, you know, able to really deliver value. I think that's great. Thank you.
You just touched on a point that we didn't talk about, which is culture and mindset. It's just, it's so important. And that, again, that doesn't happen by accident. That needs kind of like careful thinking and planning up front from the leadership teams. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Agreed. Yeah,
no, good point to end on. It's that agile growth mindset. Let's try it. Let's jump in. It's a really good time to learn, and your competitors will be learning. So you need to get in it a bit if you're not already.
Embrace it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, look forward to seeing people at our next event. And thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot.